Elvis fell 40 feet on camera, his first words became Hollywood legend. Elvis was 40 feet in the air. The harness snapped. The cameras kept rolling. What happened in the next 8 seconds was caught on film, and what Elvis said when he hit the ground became the most legendary outtake in Hollywood history. But here's what nobody knew: Elvis wasn't supposed to do that stunt at all. It was June 3, 1966. Paramount Studios, Stage 12. Elvis was filming Paradise, Hawaiian Style, his 23rd movie in a career that had shifted from rock and roll rebel to Hollywood leading man. The scene was supposed to be simple. Elvis's character, Rick Richards, was a helicopter pilot who had to rescue someone from a cliff. Standard action movie fare for the mid-1960s. But Elvis being Elvis, he wanted to do his own stunts. "I'm not letting some guy in a wig pretend to be me," Elvis had told the director, Michael Moore, during pre-production. "If Rick Richards is supposed to be fearless, then I need to be fearless." Moore tried to argue. The studio insurance company tried to argue. Colonel Parker tried to argue. But when Elvis Presley made up his mind about something, there was no changing it. So there he was, 40 feet above the studio floor, wearing a harness that was supposed to hold 500 pounds, preparing to do a stunt that professional stuntmen had rehearsed for 3 days. The setup was this: Elvis would be hanging from a helicopter, actually suspended from the studio rigging, reach down to grab an actress playing a stranded hiker, and pull her to safety. Simple enough in concept. Terrifying in execution. The crew had done 6 successful rehearsals that morning. Elvis had practiced the movements. The harness had been checked and rechecked by the safety coordinator, a man named Frank Morrison who'd been doing movie stunts since the 1940s. Everything was ready. "Okay, Elvis," Moore called through his megaphone. "This is the one we're using. Make it count." Elvis gave a thumbs up from 40 feet in the air. The cameras started rolling. All 5 of them, positioned at different angles to capture the stunt from every direction. Elvis began his descent, lowering himself down on the cable toward the actress below. His movements were smooth, confident. He'd practiced this so many times it felt natural now. 15 feet down. 20 feet down. 25 feet down. And that's when everyone on that set heard a sound that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Snap. Picture this: the main connection point of Elvis's harness, a metal carabiner that had been rated for 500 pounds, simply broke. Not the rope. Not the cable. The metal itself fractured. Later, investigators would discover it was a manufacturing defect. A microscopic crack that had been invisible to the naked eye. The kind of 1 in a million failure that safety coordinators have nightmares about. But in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was that Elvis Presley was suddenly in free fall. 40 feet in the air. 5 cameras rolling. 150 crew members watching. And absolutely nothing between him and the concrete studio floor. If you're already holding your breath, hit that like button, because the next 8 seconds changed everything. Time does a strange thing when you're falling. Ask anyone who's survived a serious fall, and they'll tell you the same thing: it feels both instantaneous and endless. Elvis later said those 8 seconds felt like 8 minutes. He remembered specific details. The gasp from the crew. The actress below him screaming. The director dropping his megaphone. The sound of the broken harness whipping through the air above him. But most of all, he remembered thinking, this is it. This is how it ends. Not on stage. Not in a concert. But on a movie set in a stupid helicopter scene. Frank Morrison, the safety coordinator, was the first to move. He was 30 feet away when the harness snapped, but he started running immediately. Not because he thought he could catch Elvis, that was physically impossible, but because his training kicked in and running toward the problem was what his body knew to do. The assistant director, a young man named Jeremy Walsh, actually fainted. Just collapsed right there on the spot. The actress playing the stranded hiker, a newcomer named Sandra Mills, was directly below Elvis when he started falling. She was still in her harness, suspended about 15 feet off the ground, and she watched him fall past her with a look of absolute horror. And Elvis? Elvis did something that nobody expected. He didn't scream. He didn't flail. He didn't panic. Instead, in mid-air, Elvis Presley tucked his body into what looked almost like a diving position and tried to control his descent. Was it training? Instinct? Luck? Nobody knows for sure. But somehow, in those 8 seconds of free fall, Elvis managed to position his body in a way that probably saved his life. He hit the ground at an angle. Not straight down, which would have been fatal. Not completely sideways, which would have shattered every rib. But at approximately a 45-degree angle, with his shoulder taking the first impact, then rolling. The sound of the impact was sickening. A thud that echoed through the entire sound stage. Every camera captured it. Every angle showed the same thing, Elvis Presley hitting the studio floor at terminal velocity. For exactly 2.3 seconds, you can count it on the footage, nobody moved. The entire set was frozen in shock. Then chaos erupted. People started screaming. Someone yelled for a doctor. Someone else was yelling into a phone for an ambulance. Frank Morrison reached Elvis first, dropping to his knees beside the crumpled body of the king of rock and roll. "Don't move him," Frank shouted to the crew rushing forward. "Nobody touch him until the medics get here." Elvis was lying on his side, eyes closed, not moving. There was blood coming from somewhere, his shoulder, maybe, or his head. Frank couldn't tell in the panic. "Elvis," Frank said, his voice shaking. "Elvis, can you hear me? Don't try to move. Help is coming." For what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 seconds, Elvis didn't respond. Frank started to think the worst. Started to imagine the headlines. Started to replay every decision that led to this moment, wondering what he could have done differently. And then Elvis's eyes opened. Not slowly. Not groggily. They just opened, clear and alert, and Elvis looked directly at Frank Morrison. There was a moment of absolute silence on that set. Everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see if Elvis could speak, if he could move, if he was okay. Elvis looked up at Frank. Then at the crew gathered around him. Then at the cameras that were somehow still rolling because nobody had thought to turn them off. And then Elvis Presley said the 6 words that became Hollywood legend. "Can we do that again? Better?" The set exploded. Not with panic this time, but with a strange mixture of laughter, relief, and disbelief. "Did he just," someone started. "He wants to do it again," someone else said. Frank Morrison, a man who'd seen professional stuntmen break down crying after much smaller falls, just stared at Elvis in complete shock. "Elvis," Frank said carefully, "you just fell 40 feet. You need to stay still until—" "I'm fine," Elvis said, and incredibly, he started to sit up. "Elvis, no," Frank tried to push him back down, but Elvis was already moving. This is the part where the story gets even more unbelievable. Elvis stood up. Just stood up, right there on the studio floor, 30 seconds after falling 40 feet. He was bleeding from a cut on his shoulder. His jumpsuit was torn. There was dust and debris all over him. But he was standing. "Somebody want to tell me what happened to that harness?" Elvis asked, brushing off his clothes like he'd just tripped over a curb instead of nearly dying. The entire crew was speechless. The director looked like he'd seen a ghost. The actress playing the hiker was crying. Even the cameramen, who'd seen everything in their careers, were just staring. "Elvis," Michael Moore finally managed to say, "you need to go to the hospital. Right now." "I'll go after we finish the scene," Elvis said. "Are you insane?" Moore was almost shouting now. You might have internal injuries." Elvis looked down at himself, moving his arms, rotating his shoulders, testing his body. "I don't think anything's broken." "You don't think?" Frank Morrison had found his voice again. "Elvis, you fell 40 feet. Felt more like 35, Elvis said with that famous crooked smile. And that's when the studio medics arrived, running onto the set with a stretcher and medical equipment. They took one look at Elvis, standing, talking, joking, and stopped dead in their tracks. "He was supposed to be on the ground," one of them said to Frank. "He was on the ground," Frank said. Then he decided gravity was optional. The medics insisted on examining Elvis right there on the set. They checked his vitals, his reflexes, looked for signs of concussion or internal bleeding. Miraculously, impossibly, Elvis seemed to be okay. Bruised, definitely. Cut up, yes. But no broken bones. No signs of serious injury. "This is impossible," one of the medics kept saying. "People don't walk away from 40-foot falls. They don't walk. They don't talk. They definitely don't ask to do it again." But that's exactly what Elvis kept insisting on. "Look," Elvis said to the gathered crowd of concerned faces, "I know that was scary. It was scary for me too. But we've got a movie to finish. We've got a schedule. And I'm fine. So let's set up the stunt again." "Absolutely not," three people said simultaneously, the director, the safety coordinator, and Colonel Parker, who just arrived on set after hearing about the accident. Colonel Parker, Elvis's legendary manager, was white as a sheet. "Elvis, if you think I'm letting you anywhere near that harness again, then we'll use a stuntman," Elvis said. "But we're finishing this scene today." What nobody expected was what the director said next. "We're not using any of that," Michael Moore said quietly. "We're rewriting the scene." "What?" Elvis looked genuinely surprised. Moore pointed at the cameras. "We got the fall. All of it. From 5 different angles. And we got your fall looking like the most realistic stunt work I've ever seen." He paused. "We're keeping it in the movie." The set went silent again. "You want to put my accident in the movie?" Elvis said slowly. "It's not an accident on film," Moore explained. "On film, it looks like you did the most dangerous stunt in movie history and walked away from it. It looks like your character is literally indestructible." Moore was getting excited now. "We'll reshoot the ending. Instead of you rescuing her with the harness, we'll have you fall, hit the ground, and still complete the rescue. Make your character even more heroic." Elvis thought about this for a moment. Then he started to laugh. "So I almost died, and you want to make it look like I did it on purpose?" "Welcome to Hollywood," Moore said. And that's exactly what they did. Subscribe for more stories where accidents became Hollywood magic, just like Elvis's near-death experience became legendary. The footage of Elvis's fall was edited into Paradise, Hawaiian Style as part of the action sequence. When audiences saw it in theaters, they thought it was the most impressive stunt work they'd ever seen. Film critics praised Elvis's fearlessness and commitment to realism. Stunt coordinators studied the footage to analyze his technique. Nobody knew it was actually an accident. Nobody except the 150 people who were on that set that day, and they were all sworn to secrecy by the studio until the movie was released. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. Elvis's fall on June 3, 1966 changed Hollywood safety protocols forever. Frank Morrison, the safety coordinator, was devastated by what happened. Even though it wasn't his fault, the carabiner had a manufacturing defect, he felt responsible for not catching the flaw. He spent the next 6 months developing new safety inspection protocols. New testing procedures. New redundancy systems. Within a year, every major studio in Hollywood had adopted Morrison's protocol, a comprehensive safety system that required triple checking of all stunt equipment and mandatory backup systems for any elevated work. One man shouldn't have to fall 40 feet for us to learn this lesson, Frank said in a 1967 interview. Elvis survived because of dumb luck. The next person might not be so lucky. Elvis himself became an advocate for stunt safety. He testified before the Screen Actors Guild about his experience. He pushed for better insurance coverage for stunt performers. He even funded a scholarship program for aspiring stunt coordinators to learn proper safety procedures. If my fall helps keep someone else safe, Elvis said, then maybe there was a reason I survived it. The footage of Elvis's fall became legendary in Hollywood circles. For decades, it was shown in film schools as an example of how to handle a stunt gone wrong. The way Elvis controlled his body in mid-air, the angle of impact, his immediate recovery, it was studied by everyone from stunt coordinators to military paratroopers. But the most watched part of the footage? The moment right after he hit the ground. You can see Elvis lying there, motionless. You can see Frank Morrison running toward him. You can see the panic on everyone's faces. And then you see Elvis's eyes open. You see him look around. And if you read lips, you can see him say those 6 words, "Can we do that again? Better?" Film historians call it the most Elvis moment ever caught on camera. In 2003, the American Film Institute ranked it number 47 in their list of most legendary movie outtakes of all time. In 2010, Paramount finally released the full unedited footage of the fall as part of a documentary about Hollywood's most dangerous stunts. When people saw it for the first time, saw the harness actually break, saw Elvis actually fall, saw the genuine panic on everyone's faces, the response was overwhelming. "I always thought it was staged," one viewer commented. "Knowing it was real makes Elvis even more incredible. The fact that he stood up and joked about it," wrote another, "proves he was tougher than any character he ever played." Sandra Mills, the actress who was suspended below Elvis when he fell, gave an interview in 2015. She was 75 years old by then, but she still remembered every detail of that day. "I watched him fall past me," she said, tears in her eyes even 49 years later. "I thought I was watching someone die. And then he stood up and smiled. I've never seen anything like it before or since." She paused. Elvis wasn't acting tough. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He genuinely didn't understand what the big deal was. To him, surviving a 40-foot fall and finishing the movie was just what you did. That was just who he was. Frank Morrison, the safety coordinator, kept in touch with Elvis for the rest of Elvis's life. They became close friends, bonded by those 8 seconds that changed both of their lives. When Elvis died in 1977, Frank was one of the pallbearers at his funeral. In his eulogy, he said something that everyone there remembered. Elvis survived a fall that should have killed him. Not because he was lucky, but because he was strong. Not physically strong, though he was, but strong in spirit. Strong enough to laugh in the face of death. Strong enough to turn a near tragedy into a teaching moment. Strong enough to care more about everyone else's safety than his own. He paused. Elvis fell 40 feet that day. But he never fell from grace. He never fell from who he was. And that's why we all loved him. Today, there's a plaque at Paramount Studios, Stage 12, marking the spot where Elvis fell. It reads: "On this spot, June 3, 1966, Elvis Presley fell 40 feet and lived to joke about it. His courage changed Hollywood safety standards forever. His humor reminded us all that grace under pressure is the truest measure of strength." Every stunt coordinator at Paramount touches that plaque before a dangerous scene. It's become a tradition. A reminder. A blessing. This wasn't just about Elvis surviving a fall. It was about how he survived it. With humor. With grace. With concern for everyone else before himself. Share this incredible story of courage and humor with someone who needs to remember that how we handle our falls matters more than whether we fall at all. What Elvis proved that day wasn't that he was invincible. It was that true strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you get back up. And whether you can still smile when you do. Elvis fell 40 feet. The cameras caught everything. But what they really captured was something more important than a stunt gone wrong. They captured the exact moment Elvis Presley proved that the king wasn't just a title. It was a mindset. Can we do that again? Better? That's not just a legendary quote. It's a philosophy. It's permission to fail spectacularly and still ask for another chance. It's the courage to fall and the audacity to want to improve. Elvis didn't become a legend because he never fell. He became a legend because when he did fall, literally, from 40 feet in the air, his first instinct was to get up, brush himself off, and ask how he could do better next time. And maybe that's the real lesson from that day on stage 12. Not that we should take dangerous risks. Not that we should ignore safety protocols. But that when life knocks us down, and it will knock us down, the measure of who we are is what we say when we hit the ground. Elvis said. Can we do that again? Better? What will you say?